everyone, before we get too far into the video today, I do just want to say a few quick things regarding the situation out in Russia right now. So if you do not wish to hear about it, I will put the timestamp down below and you can get to the part where I do discuss about hockey. But before we get into that, I do just want to say a few quick things. So starting off, obviously a terrible time out in Ukraine right now with Russia invading Ukraine. It is a very scary moment, obviously, with a whole bunch of people starting to migrate out of Ukraine and Russia getting sanctioned and all this other stuff towards them. And also a lot of hatred going on in the world right now. So I do really want to try and emphasize peace throughout the world. Obviously, if you have watched my videos, I try and avoid getting into these politics because I do feel that hockey is an escape for all from sort of the crazy world we live in regarding politics and all this other stuff. So when we do make videos, we try and avoid that political side. But unfortunately, it has come to my attention that the politics side and the hockey side have now come together. So we do have to make a video on this topic. But with that, we'll get right into the video today. And yeah. Hello everyone, welcome back to On The Fly. Today we're going to be taking a look at what the future of Russian hockey is going to look like. Obviously, as I did mention previously, within the war going on in Ukraine and Russia, we are going to try and keep away from that in this video and more just focusing on what is going to look like within the future for Russian hockey. So jump right into it with the KHL, obviously the Russian league. And two teams have already pulled out. Jokerit has pulled out of the KHL playoffs, with more to come. Most likely they will pull out of the entire league basically in a month once the playoffs go through. And Dynamo Minsk has pulled out completely from the KHL. And this is one of those things where there's a lot of backlash going on, especially in the countries not involving Russia. You look at Russia's teams, they're all going to stay in the league because they sort of are there and they're going to stay because they aren't necessarily getting that outside pressure where teams like in Finland are. And it is definitely interesting because obviously when you take a look at the geographics of it, a lot of these other countries are going to be a little bit more pressured, where Russia, obviously being the country that is sort of the eyes of the world right now, isn't necessarily going to be as much pressured to do anything, especially when it comes to their own league, where Finland, once again, is going to. And that's sort of where you kind of look at it with especially Jokerit, where this is one of their more high-end programs, and you'll start to see a lot of Jokerit guys go to the NHL and the AHL just because they want to be able to play. The time is not passed yet where they can still go back to the NHL and not have to go through waivers, not have to go through all this different stuff in order to play. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens, especially as we go along within this year, whether or not more teams are going to follow suit, whether or not they're not. But I'm very curious to see what goes on there. And now it is time to get into Russia, Belarus in terms of the IIHF, the International Ice Hockey Federation, as they also have made some big moves today, announcing that Belarus and Russia will both be out of competition, international competition, until August of 2022. So that is going to limit them quite heavily. So they will not be participating in the Men's World Juniors, the Men's World Championship, the Women's World Championship, the U18 Women's World Championship, and the U18's Men's World Championship. So when we take a look at these events, all these events are going to happen between now and basically the end of August into September. So when you take a look at it, it's going to be sort of early September is when they'll, as of now, be let back in. If more stuff occurs, you don't know. They said in their press release today that it's not necessarily going to be that date. That's the date they've given, but more is to come depending on what goes on. And it's basically until further notice whether or not they will kick them out, whether or not they will. And I hope for the growth of hockey that at some point they can allow them back in. But at the end of the day, that is up to the IIHF and basically the world when you take a look at it as to whether or not they are going to be allowed back in. I hope for hockey's sake in all these different countries that we'll be able to grow in hockey again, to sort of take your minds off of a dangerous conflict. But I think it is necessary right now, especially with the pressures they're getting. Obviously, they are based out of a NATO country, so when you take a look at it, they are going to be a little bit more pressured, as if they weren't there in a place like Russia, maybe a little bit differently. But at the end of the day, I think it is going to be necessary, just because even for the safety of the players, we have the World Championship coming up, and I think when you take a look at that right now, even when you take a look at the NHL, these players are starting to get death threats and all this other stuff, which I will touch on a little bit later on here. But with that being said, I think it's definitely a safety above all else when you take a look at it. And I think if Russia is to go to these sort of main events, there is going to be a lot of backlash from fans, and especially when you take a look at it, it's going to be a lot more dangerous than what you might think. And I think when you take a look at it really and start to look at what's going to happen to them while they're there, there's going to be quite a bit of discrimination there. So I think it is necessary right now, at least until stuff cools down, they are going to have to kind of continue that idea of trying to keep them out, trying to keep them safe as much as they can. But at the end of the day, it is going to be interesting to see when they come back. So they will serve their suspension for now, but we will see if they do come back. And as for the 2023 World Juniors coming up at the end of the year, sort of that December of 22 into early January of 23, that's another event that was originally scheduled in Russia for the World Juniors. Obviously, the World Juniors that are scheduled right now are the roundup from the previous World Juniors from this past year, as they did get canceled due to COVID. But with that, the World Juniors are going to be moved. No destination has been set yet, but when you take a look at it, it probably will be a little bit farther away than what Russia would think. I wouldn't be surprised if they come back to North America, maybe in the US, maybe in Canada, just because it's a little bit farther away from the action. And if they really do want to protect their players, a little bit farther is never a bad idea. Of course, I might just want to be seeing it back home again. But with that being said, I am looking forward to seeing what goes on there. Obviously, it is a very scary time. And I think when you take a look at the safety of the players, that should come first, especially at a time where it is very dangerous for pretty much everyone involved, wherever they go, that they are going to be definitely targets. And I think when you take a look at it especially, you want to make sure and ensure that players are safe at all times. And finally, that's going to bring me to my last point with death threats. So it's been reported that numerous times players in the NHL especially have received death threats. Of course, that is Russian and Belarusian players have received death threats from fans, from basically everyone, and they're going to have to start being security with them at all times. And I think that is definitely something that people have to pay attention to. You guys pretty much got to knock it off. I mean, these players aren't people who are running the country. If you want to send death threats to somebody, which I do not recommend, don't do that. You shouldn't be directing them to players. It should be at leadership of the government. And the truth is, the government isn't going to care that much. Your government will care, so don't do it. But they're not going to care as much as if you send it to the families. Especially don't send it to families right now. That is one of the worst things you can do, especially because they have no part in this conflict. If you have an issue with it, address it to Vladimir Putin, and just keep it away from the players. The hockey players are there to play and entertain you. Don't waste your time and don't mess with them, because they're not the ones in this war that are fighting it, that are organizing it. Send it away. Send it far away from you. Get it out of your head. Let's go. Get in the game. Let's go. With that, I think we pretty much got all of it. So thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, drop a like. If you really liked it, consider subscribing. Tell all your friends, and be on the lookout for a trade bait board coming up a little bit later on this week. And until next time, see ya.